Greetings to all of you who are present, to all of you who will be listening or looking at this video, at this production. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking the time to listen. So, we want to talk about the warrior women. And every time we talk about women who defend their lands, women who fight for improvement in their societies, the first woman who comes to mind is Ezili Danto, the archetype of the female warrior, the woman who always has her dagger nearby, whether sleeping, walking, sitting, her dagger is never out of reach. And while she is forever ready to defend, she is also an educator. She's also a trainer. And one other archetype, like we see that training and educating role in Vodou is with Ganalumanja, who is the most extraordinary warrior and the one who trained all the Ogus. In fact, very often people talking about Ogu, they say Ogu Ferai, Ogu Badagri, Ogu, then you're all the male Ogus. But who put them into this world? Who trained them? So Ganalumanja, the female Ogu, is the one who did the education of all the other Ogus. And that brings us right to our first living woman that to me is the greatest of all teachers. And that is Agbaraya Toya. This woman who was in Dahomey, in the army, the female army, assuring the security of the capital, assuring the security of the king, having given all that she was expected to give. That means the number of victories, the number of generations trained, having done everything she was supposed to do, because women in the army cannot marry, cannot have a family until they have accomplished everything they must accomplish for the nation. And you see the charge on the woman's side. The man can marry as early as he wants. While he is a warrior, he has a wife, he has children, he does whatever, he has everything in life. Whereas the female warriors, they chose that in a certain time of their life, they would concentrate all their energies to protect the nation and therefore would not have husbands and children and homes to care for, personal well-beings. Everything they spent of their energy was for the nation. So once you have accomplished everything, then you could have permission to go ahead and create your own family. And this is at that stage that Tontoya had arrived. And she was preparing to choose her husband. And while in a sacred wood, sacred forest, where you cannot go with weapons, you can only have a small knife, just enough to pick up leaves and roots and whatever you needed for medicine, because when you are a warrior, you must also be a healer. So then while she was in the sacred forest, picking up what she needed to make medicine, as she came out, she felt eyes on her and was attacked by a number of men. She overcame quite a few of them. And one of them decided, seeing her power, he just took a net and threw it at her and took her like a fish. And this is how they carried this powerful woman from where they took her. They kidnapped her and brought her to the boat. And there she would be sold in Saint Domingue. Now, before we even look at her experience in Saint Domingue, in her own nation, no man had the right to even look at this woman. No man can look at warrior officers. When they're going by, men has to turn their back on the road. And so she's living with dignity, with honor, she's great respect. Now this woman is kidnapped, taken in a net like a fish, sold, taken to a boat, and then in Saint Domingue is going to put on a block, and all kind of unknown men will be touching, palping, counting her teeth, looking at every hole in her body, and putting a price on her body. We can imagine the indignant, the feelings of degrading and everything else that must have gone through, that she must have experienced in such a situation. And ultimately, she is purchased. But she didn't take very long to study the environment, study the space where she's at, figure things out, and decide to run away. Her intention was to raise an army, but did not meet the right people. So then she decided, since their motto is conquer or die, so she didn't see how she could raise an army. She didn't see how she was going to conquer anything. So she started to pick the right plants to take herself off the planet. She began the rituals to go away. That's when she met another woman who would run away because she didn't want her child to be born in full-fledged slavery. The two women exchanged. She stayed with her to help her with the delivery. The other woman gave birth to a baby boy. And shortly after, she felt death coming. So she takes the child, hands it over to Tontoya, and say, please raise my child and make him know freedom. The other woman, that woman dies. The mother transitions. Tontoya buries her and takes the baby. Now, this is a woman who herself was about to bring on her transitioning. But now she has a responsibility in full-fledged, atrocious, ferocious Euro-Christian slavery system. She has the duty to raise a child into freedom, into a freedom fighter. And she assumes that responsibility. She's going to raise this child, do every sacrifice in the book, and we're going to come to know this child as Jean-Jacques Dessalines. What better teacher could there be? A teacher that could raise free people out of slavery. And that's the teacher we each need to learn from, so we can raise our children into a freedom fighting and freedom aspiring mind. So we could see when we talked about Ezili Dantor, we saw the warrior and the teacher. When we talked about Gan Alumanja, we saw the warrior, the teacher, and the trainer. And when we look at the life of Agbaraya Toya, we found both of these as dominant spirit in the biography, in the life of Agbaraya Toya. So it is important for us to learn to read that way. Look at not just what they tell you, but everything that is in between, behind, above, and below whatever you are being told. And that's how you come to know you're not just repeating. So let me try to maybe touch two other women. Uh, I will go, I'm on the continent, I can't just stay in Haiti. If you want to know about the 10 Haitian women who contributed to our creating our nation, get the book, Sheroes of the Haitian Revolution. But tonight, since I am here in Ivory Coast, I have to talk about Queen Popo so we can see how it's not something that happened here in one spot, but it is, when you talk about archetype, you're talking about a spirit, a picture of the soul, how your soul is designed. That's what's going on. And if you look at yourself properly, you will recognize the Danto, the Freda, the Ogu, the Alumanja. You will recognize all of them in you. And you can cultivate one or two of them in the way you live on a daily, on an everyday. So, who is Queen Poku? Queen Poku is a woman who was married twice, and each time no child came out of the union. So the husbands left her because she didn't give any children. So she, pretty late in life, married again to a third husband. And with that husband, the big miracle happened. She gave birth to a wonderful baby. The husband was recently crowned, and there was a lot of opposition, or maybe just jealousy and envy. And so ultimately, the husband was killed. And once the king was killed, others came to her to tell her they were also coming for her. So Queen Poku, some were saying, well, we will be with you, we can fight, we have an army, we have this. She did not want for the family to get into fighting. She says, no, I much prefer to go away. I don't want to be killed. I don't want my child killed. But I don't want to kill anybody either. I don't want to fighting. So in the night, she organized with those who wanted, and they flee out of that particular territory. But people who are jealous are never content. They were not happy that when they came to find her, they did not find her. So now they sent an army behind them to go and slaughter everyone who left with her. And they went through a lot, and ultimately, they came to a river, and the river was out of its bed, lots of inundation, flooding. So they couldn't continue to run away, and the other army was approaching. So then they called the oracles. What must be done? How can we be saved? And the oracle said that the river wants royal young blood to let them go. So the generals went to pressure mothers who have 5, 10, 15 children, asking them to give one child so the river would let us go. Every time they came with one child and said, okay, this child is going to be sacrificed, then Queen Poku said, did the mother agree to this? Yeah, but she has 12 children. No, did she agree to this? Call the mother. And the mother starts to hug and cry and pray for her child's life and whatnot. So Queen Poku said, no, you cannot take a woman's child. So ultimately, the danger was approaching, and Queen Poku walked into the river and dropped her own baby. She's now over 50. She knows that she cannot have other children. So she sacrificed her own child so the people would be saved. And as soon as the child was dropped in the river, the waters went low and the people were able to cross. And the queen said, Baule, which means the child is dead. And that's the name of the people after crossing that river and being saved and brought to a safe space and creating a new nation. So that's the Baule people in Ivory Coast. So these people are born from tremendous individual personal sacrifice. A woman who knew she could not have any other child and who agreed to give up her child in order to save the population, which is very different from heads of states who would say if one of their children is threatened, they will say they will set fire to the entire nation. That's an entirely different type of attitude and perception of life. So we see it's not just in Haiti that women are fighting or women fought for nation, for nationhood, for nationship, and that women agreed to sacrifice whatever they had to sacrifice in order to save the population. So that is one of, to me, an important example on how women are willing. And that's why also, traditionally in Africa, in many of our cultures, the security of heads of states was assured by women. And like in the case of Dahomey, the male generals could not come around the king with their weapons. They had to leave their weapons when they're coming to meet the king. But the female generals came around with their weapons. And everyone was sure if there was any threat, a woman who is assuring the security of someone considers that someone as their baby. So if their baby is being threatened, they will do everything. And they felt they had to be dead first before you could harm that which they were securing. Whereas when men are assuring the security of others, when they hear bang, 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 everybody for himself. Everybody covers himself first. And one of the best examples is when we look at Kennedy's assassination. All his security, if you look at the film, all his security dashed down to protect themselves when they heard the shooting. And it's a very real thing that we need to analyze and understand about security. So, when we look at, I will go to another island and talk about the three queens who freed St. Croix from Dutch colonization. See, the Dutch had the island of St. Croix. And of course, slavery, domination, all kinds of humiliations was the everyday lot. And then one time, three women decided they were going to put an end to this thing. The primary production of St. Croix then was rum. And when the rum was ready, they line up the drums of the barrels of rum all over the coast, waiting for the boat to come and take it to Europe. So the women made a plan that once all the rum was set out waiting for the boat, they set fire to it all. And the Dutch were absolutely taken by surprise. The Dutch army was put out of order. And for nearly 7 months, Queen Mary, Oxeline, they run the island until the Dutch got several European armies, to come and help them and take the island back. Then they arrested those three women and took them to jail in Europe. So as we study wherever we are, in whatever island, whatever continent, wherever our people has been, we have always found women fighting for the nation. It is only the narrative they have chosen to give you in school or to put in most books that puts women out of the story. But the reality is, no matter where we look, we will find that women were never absent from any kind of nation building or fighting to create a nation. Women were always present.